Unlike being a, movie star or a writer, or like, I mean, we don't have to be in one place, so you can live anywhere as long as you're able to travel to work, so.
Which wasn't, like, when I moved to Montreal, it was about 6 years ago, so I remember, like, having this really funny conversation with my managers. They were really nervous. They were, like, kind of like dads, and they were like, we're a little uncomfortable. Are you sure? It's far. It's, like, distance between New York and LA. And I was like, oh, no, it's going to be fine. And at the time, I was having a lot of difficulty with my cell phone carrier. I did not get a home phone. I did not have internet. Like, at that time, it was not really accessible to get, like, high-speed internet and stuff. So I didn't have internet, a phone, or a cell phone. And my managers were like...
It wasn't, but
for the first little while, they were kind of like,
yeah.
are you...
It wasn't long, though, before you were connected.
A couple months. But I didn't have internet for, I don't know, a year when I moved to Montreal. And now I'm like... Tegan and I used to... We were writing So Jealous, our record before the con. And I remember still getting express post packages or, FedEx packages with CDs, and they would have Tegan's tracks of her songs that I would put them on my laptop, and I would, record stuff, and I would take the CD and I would send it back to her.
But I think, like, we've, like, grown to be very flexible because of it, and I also think that, like, now it's so nice to, like, go home to our cities. We don't live in some big, like, it's not like in Canada, like, the big industry city was Toronto, and, like, and then you have, like, New York and LA, and both of us spend a lot of time in the States, and I think that it's really nice to be able to go home and get away from everybody. It's kind of like isolation. Our band all lives on Vancouver Island, and so the city was Toronto, and, like, and then you have, like, New York and LA, and both of us spend a lot of time in the States, and I think that it's really nice to be able to go home and get away from everybody. It's kind of like isolation. Our band all lives on Vancouver Island, and so it's like when I get home, I am, like, away from work. It's like a completely different mindset. Like, I'm able to just shut off everything, and so I'm really glad that we all have that distance, and we're in these, like, cities that are not, like, music central.
There's a ton of autonomy because you spend so much time, as we were speaking about before, in this strange world of, like, adults living together in a tiny bus and sleeping in pajamas and waking up and eating breakfast, like 12 people, like, hello, good morning, and then it's like tour's over and I go home and I don't see people for, like, weeks on end, and I just, like, have my little reclusive world in Montreal. So it's very healthy, I think, to be an autonomous songwriter. Tegan and I don't write together, so to be able to still, I think, satisfy that desire to, like, be independent and explore, our creativity independently. If I was in the same city with Tegan now, I think there would be more pressure to, like, maybe we should jam, or whatever bands do. I don't even know what bands do. We would just be like, do we play music together, or go dinner, or we'd have to see our mom together. I mean, we just like to be alone. We had a
great outdoors.
We shared a maritime border.
We did
with America and the Rocky Mountains.
No, you don't share a maritime border with America, Sarah Palin. You share a land border. We shared a maritime border with the rest of the world.
I was watching this this documentary on the CBC, which is kind of our PBS in Canada, and they were talking about celebrity and how it sort of has morphed and changed over the last couple of decades. There was a whole section on Britney Spears, and at some point, someone kind of, in defense of her, was like, let's just strip away that she's this huge pop star, that she's got all this money, all the paparazzi, everything. In truth, right now, she's just a single-parent mom raising 2 kids. And there was this part of me that was a cynical viewer. I was like, but she's not. She's not a single parent raising 2 kids. But it got me really thinking about my mom, because our mom raised us as a single parent. And we saw our dad, and we had grandparents and people around us, an infrastructure, a family. But ultimately, it was my mom, day in and day out, getting us out of bed, taking us to the daycare. She went back to school in her 20s, actually 28. We just turned 28. My mom was 28. She went back to school, 2 kids, was working. That is intense. I have a hard time dealing with my own life, and I don't have any responsibility in terms of kids or family or anything like that. So, Tegan. But she's responsible. You're autonomous. You take care of yourself. You can eat and sleep and get dressed all by yourself. But, so I've been actually writing a lot from that perspective, thinking about what my mom was feeling at, her age. And then I've recently written a couple of songs thinking about my dad. He left my mom. It was his decision to divorce my mom. And now at my age, this is when they were making huge life decisions that affected me. And I'm that age now. I'm 28. I'm like, oh my God, my dad was 27, 28 years old, and he was making a decision to leave his kids. So it's interesting because I'm not feeling necessarily inspired to write political music, and yet I am feeling inspired to write what feels like complicated, controversial family music to me. I'm really starting to look at the family structure and how I feel as a kid of divorce and everything like that. And it's weird. I don't have any desire to write a love song, like none. Like I don't want to write a love song. I just want to think. I want to think more about like life and the other side of love.
We were a Bruce Springsteen household. I think it's kind of like Madonna and Cyndi Lauper is like Neil Young and Bruce Springsteen. Like you could have gotten, depending on where you grew up and what you were interested in, you could be one or the other. But we were lucky enough that when we got out of high school, you know, we started getting into certain kinds of music, and Neil Young was like this amazing find by accident. And you know, it's amazing to find a band or a performer or an artist, writer who has like 50 records that you can get into, because if you really like it, there's a lot to go back and listen to. So when we got offered the tour, it was exciting and insane, and we were so young, we were stupid, and we didn't like videotape or take pictures, and we have like no memories.
We were terrified too. I was just...
We have nothing like to show from it, but we do have our memories, I was going to say.
Barely.
Barely. I mean, they're basically gone,
it's
but what the best, I think the most amazing story was that Sarah and I, we were in the hotel room one night on the tour, a day off, and we watched the Woodstock behind like the music, basically. I think it was like on Beach One or something, and it was basically a huge section of it was about how Neil Young refused to be videotaped. He refused to be documented as being there playing with CSNY, and it was like this huge thing, you know. And so the next day, it was just like random that it was on, and we watched this, and the next day we're like having dinner in the catering area, you know, and Elliot and Neil, like Elliot is Neil's manager, they're like sitting there, and we're just like, Sarah, like, kind of leans over and was like, you know, we were watching, like, this, like, behind the Woodstock special thing, and Neil just kind of laughed, and Sarah was like, I mean, are you sad now that you refused to be taped or something?
Like we were
no, like, she was just like, I mean, like, do you regret, like, I mean, like, you know, and he just laughed, and he was just like, oh, well, I didn't know it was going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. And at
like,
the time, it was, like, it was the 70s, and people were very, like...
Political,
and it was, like, people didn't want to necessarily have their images branded or sold or whatever, and it was, like, it's chill. He's an icon, and so when you walk into the room with someone who is iconic, they feel like they're iconic. I mean, you look at them and you're just like, I mean, it's insane, but he is actually the nicest human. He has such a kind, like, even-tempered spirit. Like, it was just very cool. And his family is always on tour with him, so they're really wonderful. They have been tremendously kind to us. We've been making records with that label for 8 years. They are so nice to us, and I ultimately think that if Tegan and I, if everyone decided that they were just going to thumb their noses at us, we were boring, no one liked us, everybody dropped us, whatever.
They'd still make records.
These people would still make records with us. They believe in us, and they believe in the creative spirit, and they believe that it should be an entire career. Your entire lifetime should be, you should have a body of work, and it's not important to make 3 big records and sell lots of records. It's like, no, you just make records, and people care. And, you know, Elliot Roberts said to Tegan and I when we first started working with him, you know, we will change hair, our music, our clothes, our words, everything will change, but ultimately what people will be investing in is us. So, you know, they're not necessarily just interested in what kind of music we make, they're interested in me and Tegan as people. And so I think it's a good investment for them. You know, we plan on being interesting forever.
There you have it.